This past week on AEW Dynamite, Paul Wight made his first appearance for AEW and revealed that there will be a huge surprise this Sunday at the Revolution pay-per-view with a quote, Hall of Fame worthy talent signing a multi-year deal with the promotion. This was further backed up by Tony Khan on the AEW Unrestricted podcast, who confirmed that a huge star will be at the show. This has caused the internet to begin speculating on who this might be, with names being circled on social media. Today we're going to run down some of the possible candidates and rule out some of the names that have been mentioned. So before we get into who it could be, let's take a look at who it isn't. These names have been taken from my comments section as well as Twitter as suggestions for who the surprise will be. One of the first names that came up after the announcement was that of Christian. Following his recent return to WWE at the Royal Rumble, people were unsure as to whether he actually signed a contract with them or whether this was a one-off. It has since been confirmed by Wrestling Inc. today that he does in fact have a deal in place with the WWE, which rules him out. The world's most dangerous man, Ken Shamrock, has came up a good few times now in the comments of my videos and community posts. Whilst he is Hall of Fame worthy and close to a major star in wrestling and no doubt in MMA, he's actually booked on Sunday for a signing in New York. Unless he gets his skates on, he's unlikely to be able to make it to Florida. Lita is another name that has came up, as she is certainly Hall of Fame worthy. Whether she is a major star is questionable, but she's certainly not too far off. However, during the AEW Unrestricted podcast appearance, Tony Khan did refer to the surprise as a he, which rules Lita out this time. Next up is AJ Lee, who once again can be officially ruled out due to Tony confirming that the person is a male. Whilst it would have been great to see AJ Lee step back into the ring, her projects outside of wrestling seem to be AJ's main focus following her retirement in 2015. And I'm going to keep this next one brief, but Ric Flair's name has been mentioned a few times as well. He is still under WWE contract as shown by his recent appearances alongside Lacey Evans, and if somehow his contract has ended, he would probably be a big letdown. Although he is a legend, I think people are expecting someone that can work in the ring in matches. And I've also seen the name Hulk Hogan come up, and no, it's not going to happen. Many have speculated that the surprise could be somebody from New Japan Pro Wrestling as part of the Forbidden Door being open. This, however, is unlikely due to various reasons. First off, it has been suggested that this person will be under AEW contract rather than part of a loan agreement, which means it would have to be somebody whose contract has expired. Also, it would have to be somebody who hasn't appeared at a New Japan show in Japan in the last 2 or so weeks due to quarantine rules. This rules out the likes of Hiroshi Tanahashi, Kazuchika Okada and Jay White, who were all at the New Japan anniversary show yesterday. It could well be somebody who has had time to quarantine or is based in the United States, but from the available options, there isn't really anybody that fits the bill. Next up, let's quickly rule out Bill Goldberg. This is a name that has cropped up a few times on Twitter. Not only would this cause immense backlash from the AEW audience, but he has revealed in the past that his deal with WWE expires in 2023, meaning he has at least 2 years left on his deal. This could have been terminated, which could be why he randomly put over Drew McIntyre at the Rumble, but I think it's pretty safe to say that it's not going to be Goldberg, as people would probably riot. And finally, some people have been speculating that The Undertaker could be on his way to AEW, which I can confirm is not going to happen. The Undertaker in fact signed a crazy 15-year deal with WWE in 2019, which sees him tied to the promotion until 2034. Funnily enough, this deal was offered to the dead man after he was announced for StarCast, which was scheduled as a companion piece for Double or Nothing that year. Out of fear of him making the jump, he was swiftly offered an insane deal. And now we've covered who it isn't, let's take a look at who it could be. First, we need to quickly run down some people that I wouldn't consider a major star, but are not too far off that title. Let's start with Rob Van Dam. RVD has recently left Impact Wrestling following a 2-year stint with the company, having re-signed with them in February 2019. It's questionable as to whether he could still go like he used to, and would likely be a bit of a disappointment given the hype AEW have caused. Back in his prime he was extremely popular, but I think it's a bit of a stretch to call him a major star at this point. The world's strongest man, Mark Henry, is another name that cropped up in the rumour mill. Whilst he is a free agent, he never really reached main event status for a substantial amount of time. His Hall of Pain run in WWE was no doubt the best of his career, which could be referenced in the Hall of Fame part of Big Show's promo. I just have my doubts as to whether expectations would be built this high for Mark Henry. Now let's get into the major stars category. Next up is Kurt Angle, who is a free agent following his release from WWE last year. Kurt has recently started a new podcast alongside Conrad Thompson, who has a knack of getting his co-host gigs in wrestling. Kurt, however, did recently say on the podcast that it was his choice to retire after his body began to lock up after not getting reps in the ring. And if you're enjoying the video so far, why not help me out and drop a like down below, and also subscribe as we try to reach 10,000 subscribers. But let's get back to the news. Whether Kurt feels he can still go whilst meeting his expectations is questionable following his comments on the podcast. This gives me doubts as to whether he'd be able to have a solid in-ring run. Perhaps he could sign in a non-wrestling capacity, but I have a feeling the mystery man will be an active part of the roster, although a Kurt Angle move could still be very possible. If the circumstances are right, Kurt Angle could be making an appearance in All Elite Wrestling. Lots of people have picked up on something Paul Wight said on Dynamite as a hint that Batista could be on his way to AEW. During his promo, Wight called the pay-per-view Evolution instead of Revolution. Of course, Batista was part of the Evolution faction in WWE alongside Triple H, Randy Orton and Ric Flair. Some are saying that this was either a hint or a Freudian slip, which suggests that the Hollywood star could be on his way to Jacksonville. This would no doubt be a massive signing, with Dave Batista starring in many top movies, having built his name outside of the wrestling world. He has addressed the AEW rumours on Twitter and has shut them down. He said, "They're going to have to come up with another word that's used specifically for professional wrestlers who actually mean it when they say they're retired. Currently, the word retired has zero credibility by professional wrestling standards." This of course doesn't really confirm anything, as it's possible that he's just trying to make it even more unexpected, and we won't know for sure until Sunday night. Dave is a multi-time champion in WWE and would certainly live up to the hype, although a lot of hardcore wrestling fans aren't sold on him, as seen by the reaction after he won the Royal Rumble in his return to WWE in 2014. Brock Lesnar's name has been on the lips of AEW fans recently after Kenny Omega called him one of the greatest athletes and performers of all time. Kenny versus Brock would no doubt be a fantastic clash of styles, so could the Beast be on his way to Revolution? Brock has been a free agent since WrestleMania 36 last year in April. He was soundly defeated by Drew McIntyre for the WWE title and hasn't been seen since. His departure was further confirmed after he was announced as DLC for the UFC 4 game last year, which would likely not be possible under a WWE contract. This means Brock is available for negotiations. Lesnar is no doubt one of the best in the world when he's motivated, as shown by his matches with Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles, and I'm sure he could put on some more great matches with many of the AEW roster. He's one of the biggest pay-per-view draws in recent times, as shown by the numbers he drew in UFC, and he would be a huge asset to AEW. I'd say it's unlikely, but if the money's right, the prize fighter could be there at Revolution on Sunday. CM Punk is the first name that comes to fans' minds when a big surprise is teased. No matter the case, Punk is always linked with any sort of return or big reveal. Ever since he sat on that stage in Las Vegas and cut the promo now known as the Pipe Bomb, CM Punk has been seen as the leader of the disenfranchised wrestling fans who wanted things to change. The Pipe Bomb verbalized many pro wrestling fans' feelings towards the WWE product, which is the type of fan AEW have targeted, making Punk and All Elite Wrestling the perfect marriage. AEW and Punk are all about revolution, and it just so happens that this surprise is happening at the AEW Revolution pay-per-view. Punk has responded to the inevitable links to the major debut at AEW Revolution during a Twitter Q&A with his fans, and has shut down any rumors of an AEW debut. Now, as usual, this has done nothing to calm the rumor, as he would obviously say that this wasn't him even if it was. It's a battle Punk has had to deal with since his retirement 7 years ago, and there's no sign of it slowing down just yet. And with that said, if it is CM Punk, we're going to be giving away a free CM Punk t-shirt from Pro Wrestling Tees, so if you're interested in entering for that, it's free, and all you have to do is follow us on Twitter and retweet the tweet that's in the description down below. And now we're going to get even more absurd, as next on the list we have John Cena, the face of WWE for over a decade, and somebody that I'll admit is probably out of the question. But let's go back to 1994 when WCW came hunting for wrestling megastar Hulk Hogan. Hogan is arguably the biggest name wrestling has ever seen, leading the WWF through the 80s through Hulkamania. Hogan's babyface character in WWF had grown stale, and fans were sick and tired of the red and yellow Hulkster regurgitating the same old act. Is it starting to sound familiar yet? This mixed in with the ongoing steroid trial saw Hogan sit out his WWF contract in 1993 as to go all in on his Hollywood career. The thought of Hogan jumping to WCW a year later wasn't even considered a possibility. At the time, WCW was considered a distant second to WWF, much like AEW is seen now in the grander scheme of things. That said, in August 1994, Hulk Hogan was paraded around the Disney MGM studios as Turner's latest acquisition. Big Match John's target audience has always been the kids, much like Hogan's was. As these fans grew older, they grew ever more opposed to the John Cena character and called for a change we never got to see. Could history repeat itself, with Cena joining AEW whilst continuing his acting career, leading to a heel turn with Hollywood Cena taking Bullet Club into the new era? Probably not, but it's always fun to fantasy book. Cena is also the host of a new show called Wipeout, which is shown on the TBS network, which is under the Turner banner. And finally, speaking of ridiculous fantasy booking, AEW have claimed to have signed a major star, and it doesn't get any bigger than the People's Champion, The Rock. Dwayne Johnson is one of the biggest stars in the world, not only in wrestling. He was the highest paid actor in 2020, topping the likes of Ryan Reynolds, Mark Wahlberg, and Ben Affleck. Rocky hasn't been seen in a wrestling capacity since October 2019, where he appeared on WWE's SmackDown debut episode on Fox. He currently has no deal with WWE, and when he does show up, it's on a pay-per-appearance basis, which is further backed up by his recent appearance on Impact Wrestling during Ken Shamrock's Hall of Fame induction, which is no doubt something WWE would have nixed if they could. This means he technically would be available to negotiate. With that said, Tony Khan did confirm that the mystery wrestler has signed a multi-year deal with the company. Not only would this be an expensive contract, but it would see Rock tied to the company for years to come. AEW's schedule would allow him to work on a limited basis, which would see him being able to continue his film career, although Hollywood could have a problem with him risking injury in a wrestling ring. With that said, it's unlikely to be The Rock, but who knows? This is a list of major stars in the wrestling world, and as I've said, it doesn't get any bigger than the most electrifying man in all of sports entertainment. Be sure to give me your final prediction in the comments down below. I'm going to be saving mine for my predictions video, so make sure you keep an eye on the channel for that.